All right, we are with Johndennis Govert. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
It is my pleasure to be here.
This will be fun. Before we get into your upcoming release, your book, The Spiral Dragon Dharma Gate, you've got a fantastic, super fascinating background. Let's talk a little bit about kind of, your experience in, a bunch of your practices from the Eastern traditions there. Like, let's get into a little bit about you, and then we'll talk about your upcoming book.
Okay, sounds good. So where do you want me to start with that?
You've got some lineages and some very interesting, practices. Maybe we can get into a little bit about that. Some of your, your Zen or Kriya Yoga, that kind of stuff. Some of your multidisciplinary things.
Sure. Yeah, back in the day when the Vietnamese War was happening, right? I was a conscientious objector, and so one of the things that I noticed about myself that I didn't like was I would get really angry about people who were anti-war. The people being violent about nonviolence. It was crazy. So I immediately thought I need to work on my own mental state.
So that's interesting because there's the people being violent about violence that were instilling feelings of violence in you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. And they were mad. They were mad that I was trying to be nonviolent. I don't know how to deal with that.
That's still going on today. It seems.
I think it is going on.
Yeah.
Maybe worse.
It's going on everywhere, wherever you can see it. So but I couldn't deal with the whole society. I could only deal with me. So I got led to doing meditation, and the one that just sort of like popped up for me that was good was a Zen meditation. And then I was doing my alternate service in Iowa City, and sat with the group and did some things like that. And then when it was all over, I went back to where I lived, which was the Chicago area, and then subsequently went to school. But I continued to continue to do the practice, and I never intended to like rack up any of these like accolades or anything, like a resume. I was just out. I wanted meditation competence. That was really the thing from what it could promise. And I was looking in the beginning for peace of mind. And then along the way, I got pulled into doing, like within the Zen practice, there's a lot of stuff dealing with energy, chi. And then, one of the sister things that you find out is like there's this whole side of things called the arts, or the Do or the Tao. And there are a number of like arts where you can kind of check your mind, check yourself. So one of them is the martial arts. Another one's calligraphy. Healing is another one. I mean, you just pick any kind of art from the East, and there's a way that you can connect it to check, like your progress. And it was used that way. So I connected with the healing side of things. And then I was also led to, study some Tai Chi, and, so I was exploring a number of those things and doing them fairly seriously. And then, I ended up finally getting an MBA in healthcare, and started working in that field. But everything just sort of like led me into the field and then out of the field, because eventually then I was helping to start an acupuncture school in Seattle a bunch of years later. And so that sort of shifted, and then everything that I had learned on the Zen side was exactly what I needed. It was like, how do you deal with energy? And there was like healing, putting energy in and using your fingers for energy and healing. So there's a number of things that weren't like, like going to school for it, but it was like transmitted with the everything you're doing, because you injure yourself when you're doing martial arts, certainly, but you don't think you'd injure yourself doing meditation, but you do, because you're sitting there for a while and your legs are in trouble and your back's in trouble and your shoulders are in trouble. And so, you just sort of like get this set of information. So anyway, that's how the Zen part unfurled for me. And then how the Kriya connection came about was a bunch of my classmates were, worried about getting hired before they got graduated, right? So they were all like sending out there were 6,000 hospitals at that time. So they were sending out letters to everything. And I thought, I just can't do that. So I heard about this really great astrologer, and it turned out to be, he was a Kriya Yoga Swami. But I was going for the astrology, and where I got hooked in it was like he was saying that you're going to get a job, but he said you won't get one until like the September after you graduate. And he gave me a date, September 15th. And so I thought, well, okay, then that summer I wasn't really too worried about, like not having a job, so to speak. It's like I spent 2 years getting an MBA and I don't have a job. I'm like a piker, like somebody who right, isn't applying themselves. And then a bunch of, out of nowhere, a bunch of interviews that came up. And then I got interviewed by the city of Chicago, and I was going to take the job. And then I didn't, because they didn't give me a really good offer. Then they came back with another offer. So the weird thing that happened was September 15th was my first day at work. I mean, and he had said this time plus or minus 6 weeks. It's like, this is somebody who didn't know me. All he had was 4 pieces of data: my name, my birth date, my birthplace, my birth time. That was it. All of that. That was it. So that, made me have to like rethink things. But there's also a side to that when you look at it, that sort of karma or destiny, if you want to look at it that way. But it's also a way to see how your practice is going. It's like, because each iteration of this that happens, and that's how you look at things, is that, if there's something that's supposed to happen now, and then the next time the cycle comes, whether it's a year or 12 years or whatever, is the problem that you're facing as intense or not? And if it's not as intense, well, then you've lessened your karma. So it was a particular practice with that. But there was also some meditative things that I ended up learning, where there was like a different kind of discussion in the yogic schools about how the energy body of a human being is. Whereas in the Zen side, it was very practical. It's just, you sit down, you do your stuff, you get up, and then you move on. You do practices, and you don't get into like heavy analysis of things. And then when I started the acupuncture school with a group of people in Seattle, there was sort of like a different problem. But the main thing is I was meeting a lot of really interesting healers. I mean, really incredible healers that understood this energy healing. During that period of time, then I connected with some Tibetan healers, which was now a different kind. So I had the Ayurvedic healers, the traditional Chinese medicine healers, and I've got the Tibetan healers. And I was really blessed to meet all these people, but it's like I couldn't work with all of them at the same time, because, there was no back in the day after Nixon went to China, it opened the floodgates for, doing acupuncture in the United States, but it was still pretty restricted.
Yeah.
It was really restricted.
Yeah, very new and fresh back then. So I wanted something that you said about checking your mind through art. Can you explain that a little bit more, what you meant by all these different modalities of art and how you use that to check your mind?
Sure. So like one of them is just like a teacher would watch you walk.
Okay.
And it's like, are they displaying confidence? But not only confidence, but confidence and just complete ease. so that it's like you're not like being crazy about looking everywhere for a threat, but you're just so open that if something happened martial arts wise, you could deal with it in that moment. And so, I mean, I'm just using the martial arts as one of the possibilities. So it's kind of, looking at just how you move, what kind of grace you have, because you can do anything where you're like totally controlling, or you can be totally at ease with whatever so almost so much so that you forget it. And it's like, that's what they're looking at. So another one is doing calligraphy, and they would have you do, like if you were interested in this, you would do calligraphy, and then, a master could look at what you had just done and said, oh, well, you hesitated there. It's like, you're overthinking it. I could see it in, it's like, it's like the gong show, beep, that's not a very good result. And then so you're working on it again, but it's this whole thing of like trying to forget yourself, because when you're learning something, you're completely
in the flow, right? You're trying to get
you're trying to get into the flow, but it's like you don't know the technique yet. So it's like, was that good enough? Was that, it's like, but at some point you get it so much that it's no longer there. Like riding a bike, when you're first riding a bike, it's you don't know what to do, and then when you're later on, it comes second nature, and that's what we're kind of looking at here, second nature.
So what your third Dharma lineage, the Tibetan Buddhism, is that meeting those Tibetan healers, did that then send you down the path towards more of a Tibetan Buddhism, or?
It did. It sort of like added that in. And then there's a part of Tibetan Buddhism that's called the Great Perfection. Dzogchen is the Tibetan name for it. And it's like almost exactly the same as Zen in a way, but it's almost like there was a Zen strain that didn't make it back into the, but the whole thing of it was, I had some really great teachers, but it really wasn't until I ended up meeting Master Chuan, who he's Chinese, but he was a Tibetan Nyingma master. And so he was the one that was transmitting this whole, spiral dragon to me. And that's when when things just opened up even more at that point.
When was that?
In 1989.
Wow. Okay.
I had just moved to Seattle, or back to Seattle, and after being in the LA area, and it was like almost immediately I ended up meeting him, and he had just gotten there himself from China, and he came sort of after that. Remember the Tiananmen Square stuff that happened back in the day?
Yeah.
He came like right after that. And then ultimately that allowed him to become a citizen of the United States, because it was political asylum for anybody who happened to come in those like month or two around that time, and it was like perfect for him to be able to settle here in the United States.
So how did you get interested in feng shui then? When did that come about?
It came about because when I was doing hospital administration stuff, I ended up doing architectural things, because I was a planner. And so they're thinking like, well, the only kind of planning we need is architectural kind of planning. It's like, well, what about the program planning? I mean, like, what are we going to do, right? As a organization. And I just ran into such craziness in doing it. It was like learning it backwards in a way. And then I realized at some point, I've studied everything that I need to study. I've studied like omenology, Chinese characters, healing, architecture. I mean, it was like, it just added up. It was like, suddenly it just checked all the boxes. It's like, well, you've studied everything that you need to know to do this. So I started doing it for myself and for friends. And then that just was one of those things that, kind of blossomed into a vocation that I had never planned. And obviously I didn't even know it as a kid. I didn't even know what feng shui was.
Yeah. I mean, I remember it being pretty popular probably in the late 90s, maybe early 2000s or something like that. Did you catch that? Were you part of that the growth of it all back then?
In a way I was, because I wrote a book about it in like 92, 93
Yeah.
On feng shui. And then I hit the wave just right. I mean, that was luck. And then the interior designers wanted me to like teach on this book that I'd done. And so, then I was traveling all over the United States just doing seminars and then I would go into a place. I remember I was in Michigan and I had this big explanation and I said, well, this is like Tai Chi. And I went on and then I just see these blank faces in the crowd. And then I said, I don't think you understand anything I'm talking about. And then a couple of brave people said, no, what are you talking about?
So how did you dumb it down for them then?
Well, I just it took all the Chinese philosophy out of it and just made it like procedural.
Yeah, exactly.
And just said, well, you can feel this and you can do this. And, instead of just referring to it, I thought I was going to just turbocharge their learning by picking up on something that I thought, because I thought it's Michigan. It should be like, Northern Illinois or something. There should be a lot of information about this Tai Chi and stuff like that. It was like, well, there is, but not with this group.
So can you explain feng shui to people if they're not sure what that is and how important it is for design, I guess?
Yeah, it's like how does place affect you? It's like, how does it shape your interactions? How does it shape what happens? It's like what happens. It's like, and then I did that with, like in planning, there's the part of management that's like that. It's like, well, where do people sit? If you want a good meeting, where do you put somebody and where, how do you like organize the room? So it's not like it isn't in the West.
It's not
it's
just
like we've got it.
It's not just like room design, right?
No, it's not room design, because obviously in management, you're doing it for outcomes.
Right.
And then I was working for a Catholic hospital, and then they realized I was doing feng shui, and I said, we want to put this doctor over here, like with his back to the door and stuff like that. It was one of these doctors that had an opinion on everything that doesn't matter, right? but he would dominate, and then after a few meetings where he was like toned down, it's not like, he was silenced in any way. It's just like more people could get their 2 cents in a meeting. And then the nun who was the administrator said, this stuff really works. She said, I don't know what you're doing, but keep it up.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So, Darren, do you have any questions before we go?
Well, I wouldn't mind unpacking that feng shui stuff a little bit more. How can you bring that into your like personal life? How can someone sort of bring this into their home?
Well, there's like 4 different ways. One is like there's the shape of things that you're in, and so like even like if you sit at a round table, like we're just going to go to a restaurant. You sit at a round table, and the round table actually spins energy. It's considered really yang, so it's like if you're at one, you never have a long conversation with people. It's just chat. And then if you exceed like 8 people, then then you never get a good conversation, because you're beyond like the human amount, like which is 7 other people in you. So like 8 is like the maximum that you can get together and be on the same page. If you go beyond that, then you've got like at least 2 things going on. But if you have a square, it gets people seated there for a long time. So then you start playing with it, and then you realize, do I want to spend a long time with this person? And it's like, no, this guy's really boring. I think let's, and then when you go to the coffee shop or something, you'll say, oh, let's just sit at that little round table over there. Right? But it's somebody you want to have a conversation with. It's like, let's go in the corner. But I mean, people do that at restaurants. If you want to be quiet, you go to a booth that's out of the way if you want to have a conversation, because it's that, that's geometry. So there's shape, there's like direction, which doesn't come into it too much. You have to like pay more attention to it. There's like the energy of things, which is like how do things actually feel? How does the energy flow? Which you could say it's like, well, you don't put your chair, like your desk, you don't put your desk chair in a corridor or like a space where people are going to pass through, because that energy shoots past you, and it just, it's not horrible, but it just keeps distracting you. You know, so you get distracted so many times in a day, and then at the end of the day, you say, "Well, why? I mean, why didn't I get that much done? I mean, I was here a long time." You know, and so, but you pay attention to that. And the other weird thing is you pay attention to the symbols in your room, you know, or in your house. And all the symbols have like, they actually kind of manifest things in your life. They're not, it seems like they're just things kind of quirky that you like, but may not, you know, it actually turns out to be things end up popping up. So, I mean, to give you an example, there's definitely more women that were into feng shui than men. And so if I was doing the house of a single woman and I'd be going around, I would look at just the photos that she had in her house and the pictures, and it'd be like a woman alone, 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 a woman alone. And then I'd say, well, what's your kind of goal? Because you're trying to, you know, set your, you know, like, what's the purpose of this room? What's the purpose of your house? And she says, well, I want a relationship. It's like, well, what you're saying to the universe is, I want to be alone. And the universe is delivering on that. Right? Apparently,
Yeah,
it's totally delivering on it.
that makes
And
sense.
then I've seen just where they change a few things, and then it's like I hear from them. It's like I met somebody now, like you know, you're not expecting it to go great the first time, but it shifts, you know, like shifts the whole, you know, dynamic of the whole thing for their lives. And then, you know, like maybe a year later, they're in a relationship they like.
Yeah, I seem to remember the direction being the thing that people were talking about a lot in the 90s and the 2000s. So like the way you put your bed towards the south, was it, or something? What when you say direction, is that like northeast, southwest kind of thing?
Yes. Yeah. And then, I mean, the main one is just like north is magnetic north, right? So the way
Oh,
of, you know, so the way of doing that is like at night, if you sleep and you put your head to the north and your feet to the south, then you're aligning your body in the magnetic flow of the planet. So it's like you're, you know, like it helps your dreams, it helps your mind, you know, but it's a gentle thing, right? I mean, it's not like, you know, a wild amount of energy that's there, but it's the repetition of stuff that you do. And you know, but then you can ask yourself, well, is this north-south thing stronger than where your bed is placed relative to a corridor or a door? Or if like you sleep with your back to a window, or you know, your head to a window, you know, what happens then? And, you know, the main thing really on all of this is anybody who spends any time just like feeling their environment, you know what I'm saying? And it's just like, it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. If you just keep working with that and asking yourself, why doesn't it feel right? And then you'll make like a little adjustment, another little adjustment. And then before you know it, you've got you know, something right. So for people who pay attention to what they're doing and then work with it just to get it right for themselves, 80% of the time they've got the feng shui, you know, they're doing the right feng shui thing. You know, and there's some people that just have no clue, and they, you know, and the people that are burned the most are people who just jump into something and they accept it the way it is and they don't change it, and they don't, you know, they don't even give it a second thought, and then, you know, they get very unhappy with it, but they don't know why. It doesn't work.
yeah, that makes sense.
Is
Darren,
that
you got
limited to like design and stuff like that, or does that go into your clothing? And is that like a whole?
Well, it can't go in the clothes. I mean, because all of the directions are connected to colors. They're connected to elements. So, I mean, it's sort of like a way of how you're inviting that energy kind of in. And then it depends on where you live, you know, do you have a mountain behind you? Do you have like an apartment block behind you? Do you have, you know, does the hill go up from your door? You know, so every time you go out your door, you have a struggle to get up, you know, as opposed to the person who just walks out flat, or, you know, they're going down a little bit. All of those things have like these effects on what you're doing. And then the design is like that, just to kind of get things comfortable and useful for however you're going to use the room. You know, so you have to say that to yourself. What do I want out of this room?
That all seems pretty practical in a lot of ways, really, right? Like a lot of it is pretty intuitive. If you put your desk in the hallway, you're gonna have a bunch of interrupt. It's a lot more. I always pictured feng shui as being more sort of woo woo than I mean, that all seems pretty grounded in practicality.
There is, and the problem was a lot of the people who got into feng shui made it more woo-woo than it needed to be. Right?
Well, you know what I was thinking about, and Darren, I don't know if your head went there too, is because we haven't really talked about this ever, feng shui, but I thought of the sacred geometry and architecture in the cathedral building and like how they used natural principles like the Fibonacci and the phi ratios and all this to build these sacred buildings, and wondered if feng shui had anything if that was a part of feng shui, or maybe it was called something different in those types of traditions, you know?
Yeah, I mean, each what I found is each culture has a set of information about this. Some of it is more detailed, like in India and in China, it's really there's a lot of information all in one spot. You know, and then the Hawaiians have, you know, certain things in their environment that they'll talk about, but it's everywhere. And certainly the cathedral builders, it was all about. But like one of the weird things about the cathedrals is you got these giant, you know, roofs, right? And it's like, if you go into a building like that, it pulls you up, which is what you want to do. You want to be inspired. But if you happen to have one of these over your desk that's really high, it pulls you up, but it's like, but I got to type here. I got to, you know, I got
to be grounded at my desk.
What about the modern high rise and stuff like that? So stacking people on top of each other, does that fuck shit up?
Yeah, it does, depending on where the people are and what the angles of it are. And I mean, the main thing too is like, are there like triangles that get pointed at you from other buildings, which are tends to be aggressive, whereas a square is like more normal. But it's like, you know, if you go into a bar, you know, and you want to start a fight, you do this. You point at somebody, which is like a triangle, and then, but if you're the person who's the wingman who's trying to stop the fight, you go, hey, you know, and you create a wall, you know. It's like we automatically do this stuff. It's part of us, but you know, it just we don't filter it back to reflect more on it's like, these just behaviors that come normally are applicable to our environments.
Do you have any more?
Kind of natural. It's like if you came up to a table, you would never set yourself up on the corner of the table. You know, you'd always go to both sides because it's better. You never want to be the guy sitting on the corner if it's someone has to sit on the corner situation.
Right. If you're the last person there and they put the chair there, you're like, oh. But yeah, you do. If you're the first one there, you never take that spot. Never.
Do you have any more insight about the cathedrals at all besides the height?
Well, it depends on how they do. Like, you know, in the old cathedrals, they're like the cross form. Yeah. And the interesting thing is it creates like different churches, you know, it's like different groups, because it's like you've got like one part of the crossover on one side. So that those people are in a different space. The people over here are in a different space, and the people down the middle are in a different space. And then the choir is at a different space, wherever they're at. And then the people celebrating are in a different space. So it's like you got all these different groups, and it's like, are they going to connect? And then that's where you get people that say, I always sit in this part of the church, because they're comfortable with whatever they get at that spot. And then they get grumpy if you move them, you know, you change their experience, because it's like they don't like sitting way out in the open. They like it with the, you know, the lower area of the roof above them, and they don't like the giant cathedral windows there. So
the thing I was most blown away with was just the acoustics in those places. I mean, it really was something how because I was in the one in Canterbury when they started playing the organ in there. Mm-hmm. It was just like, you could it was amazing how this thing could echo through the whole building. You can hear that so clearly, but you can't hear the people chattering on the other side of the room. You know, it's really this sort of weird thing.
Yeah, it is a weird thing, but there's just a lot of thought that really went into those.
Like super feng shui.
Yeah. And, you wouldn't call it feng shui because it wasn't Chinese related at the time, but it was a different set of cultural principles. And it was based on Fibonacci partly. And the Fibonacci creates the spiral. So I mean, that's like one of the things that the spiral of life, the spiral of living things, the spiral of growth.
Interesting comment in the chats here from Orfeo Tresula. There are primary forces that structure and frame physics and call it magnetism. And he says, or they say, the best science has to deal with them, but so have the best traditions.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah.
Like the interesting thing is, like my teacher, Master Chuan, used to say, he said, actually at the highest level, Buddhism is science. He goes, but Buddhists will not admit to that. And he goes, and the scientists will not admit to the fact that they're studying Buddhism.
Well, yeah, I mean, at the highest level, science gets pretty metaphysical. I mean, no matter what direction you go in, it starts to get weird.
Yeah, it does.
So what has that been like for you to see science and spirituality kind of combine at the highest level over a lot? Because you've been into this for decades. I mean, you're talking about going back to the 80s, 90s, right?
Oh, yeah.
Must be weird for you to watch it all evolve.
Yeah, it is. I mean, but it's it's like my dad was a chemist, and then it turns out, and then my brother became a chemist, and it turns out that Master Chuan was a chemist. And then, my dad's side of the family was German, and Master Chuan's first foreign language was German. And he actually translated from German to Chinese, Chinese to German, so it was like he didn't have a lot. What was great for me was he didn't have a lot of, he was like a scientist in let's investigate it. You know what I mean? It's like, keep an open mind, just investigate it and see what's there. And so he didn't really have a lot of the, pre thought out notions of like, what should it be or what should it not be? Let's just look at it. And I was sort of brought up with that. So it worked for me in a sense, but the more you kind of study this stuff, you realize, oh yeah, that's that kind of principle. And then just the other weird thing with Chinese medicine, it's like there's like you're talking about the Fibonacci, there's this incredible proportionality that goes on in the human body that's measured by how many fingers high everything is. And it turns out that, like you get up to here, it's 96 fingers from your feet to top. And if you go 1, 2, 3, you're at the sacred number of 108. So it's like, well, where does that number come from? Well, your body is like entrained into that proportion, and then between the chakras, there's either 4 or 6. I mean, it's like there's this incredible proportionality that you discover as you just look at this, and you realize just how amazingly structured it really is in a way, but you don't give it a thought because it's like very cash when you just look at it.
Yeah, and then the ancients used a lot of that in their architecture too, and in their and I mean, it comes from Darren and I have been talking about that 108 as far as celestial mechanics too, because it does go all the way up to solar and lunar mechanics, and then it comes all the way down to the body. I mean, it really is in everything.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's the weird part about it, and that 108 measures distance and it measures time. And it's just like it's a divider, like 1. You put 108 into that some number that you've got, and you get like 60 of these, or 12 of those, and it's like you get just a whole number.
It's like an octave too, because then from 108, 216, and 432 are very important numbers, and then it goes up and up, and those numbers are repeated in all kinds of things.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how it works.
That's fascinating. So I guess let's get into your book. Like, so what you were shown the Dharma, the spiral dragon Dharma, I guess, a long time ago. So now you've written a book about it. It's coming out soon. Do you want to get into that? Or?
Yeah, I'd love to. It's called Spiral Dragon Dharma Gate, which is what the name of this is in Chinese. Because actually, is what I looked at. I mean, my teacher and his teacher were both Chinese, but they were masters of Tibetan Buddhism, which made them like really unusual people right? Like crossing that kind of culture. But it was before the PRC took over everything, right? The practice is like, it's considered a treasure practice, which means that in Tibetan Buddhism, there's certain things that get shown to masters at different times where it like recodifies or represents how to do practice. And it's sort of like you're doing the changes. It's not like it's required, but the change is easier for the people of this time to practice in this way. It's not like they couldn't get their heads around it, but they probably won't get their heads around like something from a farther back place in time. But in this case, they're able to sort of like pick up on something. And so usually there's different kinds of categories, which aren't really important to go into at this moment, but some are just categories where it gets directly downloaded into your mind or to your energy body. So that happened with Master Chuan's teacher, whose name was Senton Dorje. So she was at age 18, she treks across China, goes to Tibet, goes to a monastery, and then she does a 13-year retreat in a cave. And while she's in this cave, this particular practice of spiral dragon is shown to her.
Wow.
And then she works it out, and then later on she leaves, and that she's one of these people who's like a wandering yogi. And then she comes across Master Chuan at a later time and shows him, how to do this particular practice. But I was asking him, I said, well, how did she explain this to you? And then he was kind of like a little bit miffed. He said, she never explained it to me. He said, she just showed me how to do it. It's like, he said, I've spent the rest of my life figuring out why it's done this way and how to improve it and any of that stuff. So that was kind of his sense of it. It's really simple. There's like 5 moving exercises, and there's a meditation. And then, so it's like, it's structured, but that it accounts for like you going off and pursuing some stuff on your own, like investigating it. So the name that comes with it, Spiral Dragon Dharma Gate, is the spiral has to do with the spirals, DNA up to spiral galaxies, right? So spirals across dimensions or magnitudes. And then, of course, like you're saying, the Fibonacci, that creates spirals. So it's like it's in line with that. And the thing is that the spiral allows is for acceleration to happen. So it speeds up 2 things. Like the purpose of this that Senton Dorje got was, number 1, it's important at this period of time for people to step up, like human beings, to step up and be able to realize like their full potential, and do what they're supposed to do on the planet, what they came here for, and getting everybody to do that is what's going to fix the planet. Not by like everybody agreeing in the government, but just everybody activating their own potentials and skills and moving forward with it. And so it leads to it's the first acceleration. The second one is enlightenment. And so it is a long journey. I was remembering when Master Chuan was asked, somebody asked him and said, well, this is faster than regular Tibetan Buddhism. And he said, well, if you're considering lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes, if you go into a monastery and you can achieve enlightenment in 30 years, he said, that's pretty fast. But then he said, Spiral Dragon is faster. And he said that, he says, we don't have 30 years. It's like you don't have 30 years. Nobody has 30. It's like, and he meant like individual humans. We each don't have 30 years to get this done. So it's got to be done faster. So this particular method came forward. So you don't even have to spend the 30 years doing it. You have quicker way.
It's funny. I've heard the faster way called the straight path, the spiral path being the slow, long traditional way, and the straight path kind of cutting right through. But this is interesting to hear it the other way.
Yeah, it's like it's the spiral does something different. And so the very first two exercises of the whole thing put you into like the spiral dynamic, let's say.
Okay.
And it's not like you've never been in the spiral dynamic before. It's like all of the exercises of spiral dragon are things that you've done with your body before. It just moves, you know. The only thing is you just haven't concentrated it. You know, it's like you haven't kept up like a pattern and repeated it. But to get to the spiral dynamic is the first most important thing. So even if you do that, so the first part of the spiral dynamic is you have to relax, because it's like you'll never get anywhere without relaxing. And then the second part of it is you sort of relax your spine, you put your head back, and it sort of creates like it hooks you into a different kind of energy. And some people will feel it within the first maybe 10 minutes of them like learning this. And at the longest, it takes you like a week of practice to like get yourself into the spiral dynamic, but it's usually pretty quick. I mean, the main thing is like people that takes a week, it's like they're not really practicing every day. It's like I skipped a couple days. So it's easy enough to like achieve that. And then the main thing of like this practice, but like every practice, is that you're using it to like check yourself. Like I was saying with the arts and Zen, it's like, now if I do this practice and then I do something that I consider myself really good at, it could be golf, it could be cooking, you know, I don't know what it is, but it's like something that you do. It could be playing the piano, but it's something that you enjoy and something you're good at. And so you do this practice, and then the next thing you know, you are you compare what you do before, you know, like you could play a song beforehand, or it could even be like solving a crossword puzzle. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's got to be something you like. And then you do just this first two things, and then you do the same thing, like maybe play the exact same song. And then you'll notice there's a difference. Or there's a difference when you serve something that you've made, they go, wow, this tastes great. And it's like, it's not different than anything you've done before. You know, you think, right? I mean, it's like I follow the same procedure, but it's not really different. And then from that, once you start to see that, it's like, whoa, this is really powerful for something so simple to do. Then you want to learn the other three exercises where you're moving the energy through the hands and things like that. And then it gives you sort of like a way to apply this to the things that you're interested in life. And then that's how you're developing your skills and you're developing your excellences in a sense from that, because it's like you're already enthusiastic about it. And when you see like making progress when you were sort of stalled on something, it's like, whoa, I just did a jump. And the weird thing is I did a jump without doing more, like practicing the piano, you know, like I didn't add an extra hour a day to do that. It just happened the minute I did this other thing. So I must have untapped something, you know, and then you play with that after that.
So what's different with that energy that you described? What's the difference between that and other energy systems like Qigong, that type thing?
Well, the interesting thing, you know, it's working with Qi, certainly, but Qi actually is linear in how it works. So it's like, you know, even when you watch those martial arts movies, even though they can be kind of fantasy sort of things, if somebody like pushes against someone and then it's like they don't go in an arc, you know, like when you push it, it's like if you push somebody, they go back towards the wall or wherever across the room. But this, you know, so the difference is like how the energy moves, I would say is the big thing. And the other thing is that the Qigongs have, like, you could say 4 or 5 different purposes. I mean, one of them is martial arts. That's the biggest one that people know about. Second one is healing. That's the next biggest one that people work on. The third one is like developing psychic powers or supernatural powers, if you want to call it that. A fourth one is it's used in art, like to develop people's artistic abilities. And then the fifth one is not just psychic abilities, but this is like increasing yourself spiritually and towards enlightenment. The movement towards enlightenment. So that's kind of the difference. So the spiral dragon is definitely dealing with enlightenment, but it also adds like a sixth category, which is like what did you come on Earth to accomplish? And let's move you to that. Yeah.
Which is
for
key,
your own
right?
happiness.
Yeah, that's key, right? And for people to excel in the things that they're focusing on and that their intention is there for. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the things that they love. And then it's like from that, you're gonna create all kinds of interesting things. And over the course of your life, it's gonna change, right? You're gonna move from, you'll tweak it and you'll move on to something different. But it'll be like an organic kind of, step to step. And it opens doors, it opens ideas, it connects all during that period of time.
Darren, what were you saying?
Well, I was just saying that used to always, I think that like a certain level of this used to be, you were talking about mastery and about excellency and about what I was saying was just a smart ass comment about it not being playing video games or, scrolling TikTok. But
right.
There seems to be this overarching sort of loss of all of this excellency or even like anything, any sort of drive whatsoever, where most of people are, even people when they go to their jobs, they're not particularly giving a shit on what they're even doing there, let alone what they're doing to themselves. Or it's like all that sort of mastery goes hand in hand. If you're working on yourself, you're going to be working on these other things to us, you're going to be sort of good at all those things. So I guess the question might be how much has like stepping away from this to the, like, what are sort of, or how much was this baked into the olden societies so that we didn't end up sort of where we're at today?
Well, I think that it was baked in a sense, like if you were a, like you were a chef, like, you go into some place in Japan and it's like, it's like an art form and they're making something in front of you. I mean, it's like a mastery that they're showing, but that's part of, it's part of that, for each kind of thing, you're paying attention to what it is that you're doing. And then in a way, it's what you're really thinking of is like, well, how could I do this in a little bit better way? I could do less effort maybe and produce a better result. I could be more efficient, but you don't even have to think of it as efficient. It's like, well, what if I do this? And there's a certain play with it, right? Because it's like you have to play with it to get because if you get a crazy idea of like, I need to produce this result. I mean, so where is that idea coming from? But then when you try to do that, then you find out you even if that thing that you think you're going to produce, it may take you in a different direction, but it's teaching you how to improve what you're doing. And what it really comes down to is each of us like paying attention to everything we're doing all the time. I mean, that's as opposed to just like, laying back and tuning out, so to speak. It's like, as long as we're engaged in what it is, and we don't have to be engaged in a tense way. And that's like what the first thing, the relaxation is. It's like, it's teaching you to be relaxed in mind, in energy, in emotions, and in any posture in which you are. And then if you do that, then it's like you realize that it suddenly opens up different ways that you can act, different ways that you can move. It's kind of it really opens a whole universe to you, and it's just paying attention to it. And it's really all just kind of naturally one step to the next step. I mean, it's like you're not adding any like craziness to it. in a sense. It's just like you're paying attention to your life, you know, from moment to moment. And that's one of the skills that this is coming from. And meditators get that somehow, but it's not always meditators that have it. People that are focused on something that they love to do, or some profession that requires a lot of skill, and so they've learned to develop that.
Yeah, it's that mastery that I think, Darren, what you're getting at is that mastery that's missing.
That seems to be missing from the West right now.
Mm-hmm.
In like all regards. It's like the amount of people who just hate their job and are just like counting the minutes until it's over, doing as little work as possible, not sort of realizing that automatic thing is going to it's going to project onto all aspects of your life. You can't just do shitty at one part of, it's sort of, if you start doing shitty at one thing, it sort of takes over the place.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there's a saying like in China and Japan, it's like, if you shoot for excellent, sometimes it'll be good. If you shoot for, good, sometimes it'll be good, sometimes it'll be passable, but sometimes it won't be. If you shoot for the bottom, which is just passable, sometimes it'll be passable, but most of the time it won't be.
Yeah.
How do you pull out of something like that as a culture? Because I don't know if you're noticing it where you are, but it just seems like every place I go or everything I try to do, it's just hard to find outside of like a small business where it's a dude who owns the place, that is dealing with you. It just seems like morale is at an all-time low, or there's just no meaning found in the jobs that they do have. And, we could get into a whole bunch of different reasons why that might be, but I'm just wondering, from an overarching sort of standpoint, how do we pull out of that? It sounds a lot like a lot of this stuff in your book would be a good start.
Yeah, it's like it gives you a different way to engage things. And then the spiral dragon, like, a number of other practices, but this especially accelerator wise, it gives you a way to like let go of the conditioning that you've got. And that's part of the problem. If everybody's conditioned to just do an okay job and put in their time and not really
feel like
do much. Yeah. But they have to let that go in a way. And then it's like, sort of like when you let that go, then you can have that sense of like, oh, this is actually kind of interesting, and then you string that together. It's like, how many interesting things can you find in your day? But you won't find anything interesting if you're not paying attention.
When I read your title of the book, I thought of the Kundalini, and I wondered if is that a different way to express that Kundalini energy or to release it, or is this similar at all?
Well, it is in a sense. This is like a yoga of fire, if you want to call it that. And then in Tibetan, there's a name for it called Tunmo. But it's usually, Agni yoga is like a name in Sanskrit, but it's the yoga of fire. And what that is somehow we've got to like increase our energy fields in order to like even generate interest in things.
Right.
Because what's happening is, if our energy fields, then we become dull.
Right.
And that's part of what you were actually also expressing, Derek, because you run into people who are dull and they're okay with being dull. But it's like you need to, it's like we have to like literally reignite that field. And Kundalini is one of them, but it's like that's not a usual thing that happens. But any of the chi practices, where you start to realize that actually you have this energy in your body and you can move it and you can play with it. And it's something there, and you can, it can shape things for you. And then it can turn into, the chi can turn into light, and the light can turn into information. And, each one, there's like a stage of where it can lead to after that. But you got to get sort of like back into the energy. And the big thing about the energy too is if there's a lot of people that are ill, let's say, low immune systems and things like that, one of the problems is there's just not enough energy in their being. So you got to do something about like re-energizing your body just to achieve a certain amount of health.
Right.
I mean, just for that.
Yeah. Where does the word dragon come into it? Where does the title dragon come into it?
Dragon comes into it like the fifth sign of the zodiac of the Chinese is the dragon, and the fifth sign of our zodiac is Leo, the king, the sovereign. So it's like the sovereign, but it's also the dragon is also not like a human being, right? So it's not like that, but it's like a being that's powerful. It lives in between the thunder and the lightning, or it lives in the water, where there's all kinds of energy. So it sort of has its energy in the water. So it's like it gives you a sense of that. But the dragon also take sovereignty for yourself. It's like, don't think of yourself as an automaton. Don't think of yourself as a slave. You are sovereign in your own life. And it's like you start to get this sense about where that comes from. And then the Dharma part of it is, that's a translation for like your own truth, but also what did you come here to do? Your Dharma is like, what is it that you came to like accomplish onto this on this planet? And then that last word gate has two meanings, like translated from the Chinese, it does. So the gate in one sense is like, there is an entry into this new world that's happening. And so you go, you're actually entering into like a new kind of dynamic. And then the other part of gate, when you translate it from Chinese, it can refer to systems. So Microsoft operating gate, or, management, system. So what this is also saying is that these 5 practices and the meditation and some mantras that go along with it are all you really need to accomplish this. You don't have to do everything else. It doesn't say that you can't do it. It's like you can practice in different contexts, and whatever else is great. But it's like this gives you all the tools you need to create this great transformation for yourself. And then ultimately it's going to move outward to the world and like take care of other people.
Yeah, I love how you tied in the autonomy there and being responsible for yourself, and being less of a victim and more about taking the sovereignty, and using this to help you with increasing your sovereignty levels. I love that. So what about the audio like, is there an audio portion to this as well? Like, how do you describe the movements in your book? Is there?
Yeah, there is an audio that I did. So when you buy the book, there's like a page that's got a
QR code,
a URL you can go to.
Yeah.
And then it has 2 sets of audios. So the publisher decided to make all, like I have all the pictures of how to do it, and then they redid one, just the pictures by themselves at the end, so you could compare it faster. And then I have an explanation of that group. It's like, well, how do you do it? And it's like between a minute and maybe 3 or 4 minutes each one. So there's like, something about how to practice it and why. And then the other thing is there's a bunch of mantras that you can use to practice with. And so there's an explanation in that set of like, what is this mantra good for? And how do you pronounce it? And then I usually do 21 or sometimes more, so that you can hear it long enough to work with it.
Excellent. Is there anything else about the book that you should let us know about?
Let me think of what the important thing of it is. We think that our Dharma, it's like, what did we come, like in the West, we think of like, we came out of this planet to do one thing, right? And that's true, but things are changing so much. So what this allows us to do, this whole Dharma side of it, is to enter into a conversation with the universe, where you're getting led to consider different kinds of things. It's like you can have this sense of like, I wonder if, and then you can explore that. And then as you get this sort of thing, like I never thought I was going to do feng shui, but it's like after I practiced Spiral Dragon, it was like, oh yeah, that's the right thing to do. Do that. That's really important. But now it's more important that I do teach this practice directly to people. So it's like my emphasis here, what I need to do is shifting, but it's like it's opening up a conversation with consciousness, if you want to call it that, or with an intelligence, the intelligence of the universe, however you want to describe it. And then, of course, you're going to verify it, or, see, am I being told the truth, or like, is it valid or not? And then when you find you can trust it, then it's like you'll say, okay, I need to make this experiment or that experiment. So Spiral Dragon is really an amazing, and the other part of it is such a simple system compared to like Tai Chi or like learning a martial arts. And the other thing about Tai Chi is like, I've known people who've studied Tai Chi for like a couple of years, and they've never felt chi. And it's like Spiral Dragon, somebody will do it, and then within the first class or two, they're feeling it. And then they have this kind of like, oh, this crazy look on their face, like, what's that?
Well, that's an important part. I mean, that's kind of what I wanted, that's the other thing I kind of wanted to ask you about, is just how to, like, for people that still don't believe in chi. I mean, I don't think there's a lot left, but there's, it's important to feel that. And it's important to know that there is kind of a metaphysical aspect to this.
Yeah, I mean, it is important. And then this is really simple to do. It really, I mean, it's like you feel it right away, and then you realize that, and then as you play with it more, then it, the field gets bigger, and you can do other kinds of things with it, which is extremely helpful. But just especially for Westerners, getting that idea. And then the other thing that's really helpful is like, well, then test it with your own healing. Or if you've got kids or people in your family that get sick, it's like, test it with them. It's like, is there something you can do by directing the energy? And can you relieve some of their suffering? It's like, you're not saying cure them from everything that they've gotten. Don't make them punch a home run. But it's like, just get some relief of it. And then you gain confidence in doing it, and you realize what power is there. So it's like it really is kind of a re-education of what is possible. I mean, that's the big thing. The first one is it's like, what is possible in the world? What is possible for me? Yeah. And it changes your whole view of everything.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Where can people get the book when it comes out? Where can they follow your work? Where can they get your old books? Do you have a website? Do you have social media? Any URLs you can give our listeners?
Yes, I can. So maybe I could do that.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Okay. There it is. Yeah.
Spiral Dragon, Dharma Gate, 6 key Tibetan practices for enlightenment. It's published by Inner Traditions, so you can get it at their website, innertraditions.com. You could go to amazon.com, and it's already up there. It's supposed to be out in a few days. By the 9th of September, it'll be out everywhere. And then my website is called Chintamani, CHINTAMANI matrix.com, which has my another book that I did. And then, of course, you go to amazon.com, you'll find all my books there, and you'll find them listed at the Chintamani matrix.com as well. And then I'm not super active on social media, so it's probably easier to get send me a message through the website.
Okay,
but I do have an account, so I mean, it's like I could get message through Facebook or through LinkedIn.
It's better to avoid those places anyway sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. You never because people are like, "You're doing what?"
Johndennis, this has been great. Thank you for coming on the show. We hope the book does well. We hope all our listeners pick it up for you. Other than that, thank you very much, and we hope you have a great rest of your day over there on the West Coast.
Well, I will, because it's going to be sunnier here than it is there.
It's pretty sunny here, so I'm in the middle. I think it's raining where Graham is, and it's sunny here. So,
are you in Cleveland?
I'm in Alberta.
Oh, Alberta. Okay.
Did you think Cleveland because of the Indians?
Because it looked like the
That's
the
actually
Indian for the Redskins, which is now thrown out, right?
actually from the Mohawks, the Mohawk Reservation out east. My buddy sent it to me.
Oh, cool. That's very nice. Very
Yeah,
nice.
that's the fight the power flag, right? I'd probably fuck
Yeah.
that up. He's gonna text me now. But anyway,
Yeah.
thank you for coming on the show and have a great day.
And you too. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Bye now.
Bye. And that was a chat with Johndennis Govert, Spiral Dragon Dharma Gate. What'd you think?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna try that out. I've been thinking about qigong a lot or doing something. So maybe this is the thing I need. You know, it seems like it's the shortcut, the qigong shortcut, and it must be in that bag of books you gave me. Right? I haven't gone through it all. It's in the garage.
It's in the bag of books. Yeah,
I
definitely.
fit them somewhere back here.
And I think maybe the next guest book is in there as well. Because
Okay, I better take a look.
a couple of those books had literally just come in on the front porch that day, and I just like instantly opened them and put them in your pack.
Thanks.
I got so many books, you know. You've seen I have no room for books without picking up a new shelf. And then when you get a new shelf, it looks all bare for a while, you know. So it's a real. You're better off just stacking them in the corner for a bit until you need a new shelf. But you might as well fill up all your shelves first.
Orfeo says Zen was how I got my act together as a teen. Nice guest. Yeah, he was a good guest. I really appreciate these guys that I don't know about who have been practicing this stuff for decades, you know, and they've just gone through this initiation and training after training and all these like Eastern mysticisms, and it's amazing. I was happy with that.
Absolutely, that was a good show. And you know, what time? I wonder what time the sun sets. Maybe I'll go hunting. It's probably a bit late by the time I get out there, dude. I'm jonesing to get an elk now, or an antelope. Everything's starting to rut now, so it's like prime time for a couple of these things. The next like 2 weeks are prime time. So not that it gets a whole lot worse, but when they're rutting hard, dude, that really is when, especially with the bow, that's your best chance because they're thinking with their nuts. So
are you going out with a bow this time? Are you trying to get them with a bow then this time? Or?
I'm gonna be doing. I'll probably go out with the bow tomorrow and Saturday and Sunday.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
And then Monday is opening day for ducks and geese. So Jesse Cole is pretty stoked. Because right now I don't have a lot of bow hunting buddies. I'm trying to get Jesse into it, so then I have at least someone. So when bow season rolls around, I'm the only one who's super gung ho. Because no one else, and I don't even have to wait till bow season, but you kind of do. It's kind of hard to, like I say, it's easier to get to these animals when they're coming into calls and stuff like that. When you have to get within 40 yards. So I'm trying to get Jesse into bow hunting, so I got someone else to go with when it fires up. But the bow hunting, I mean, honestly, going by yourself ain't the worst thing in the world because it's just one less person trying to creep around out there. The antelope is super easy to do by yourself anyway. With an elk, it's a little trickier. It'd be nice to have another guy. Like you got to break down an elk by yourself.
Oh yeah, that part of it. Yeah, but the hunting part might be fun. It might be good to just get out there on your own.
Oh yeah, you can be so much quieter, and so when it's just one person. Once you have two people, you just at a minimum 2 times as loud, probably more like 3 times as loud because you're each taking the other person's noise. It just escalates.
Yeah.
But then duck and geese Monday, so that really does tend to take over everything else. And once you get into ducks, man, it's hard to get out of ducks because you can just go every day, just go again and again and again. So I'll probably slip into ducks and bow right now until the boys get here.
Cool.
Which is only 20 days away now. I mean, Tony gotta be jacked. I know this year's flying by.
August, you were the one that said it too, how August went, and I looked, August went by I think it's the fastest month of my life. I looked at the long weekend between the 2 long weekends was unbelievably fast. I don't even know what happened.
You know what I think part of it is, outside of just having the dream job, is it's always like we've always got something coming up.
Yeah.
It's like there's always something, it's the ranch cack, it's the hunting trip, it's the Azores, it's Easter Island. So it just seems like whenever those sorts of things are on the horizon, you just seem to get to them faster. Yeah. As opposed to if you don't have a marker, I guess. Maybe, I don't know. I think a lot of it is just not having to spend 8 hours a day doing something you hate. I mean, time really drags, right?
Yeah.
That's the bonus of having a job. I mean, so let it soak those in because those are the slowest moving hours of your life. Just do some Zen stuff.
Appreciate it now while you can before it flies by too fast.
So big thanks to Johndennis for coming to the show. Big thanks to you guys for listening. If you tuned in live, that's great. Over on the YouTube, check out grimerica.ca/support if you can. We're trying to do this show. We're trying to make a living of it. But if we can't do that, then we won't be able to do the show because we'll have to go do something else. We don't want to do that. Check out grimerica.ca/support today if you're getting some value from the show. I think this is episode like 730 or something like that. Sign up for a monthly or make a one-time donation today. And we'd be super grateful. I mean, we'll read your note. We'll do all that stuff. We got some people to thank on the next intro. And that could be you. You could be a Lord. You could be all those things. Check out adultbrain.ca for all the audiobooks. Just had a couple bangers come out over there. Should be on Audible coming out later this week. There's also print books and all that sort of stuff there too. I mean, we got the best versions of some of these old books, literally, through Adult Brain, because we're the only ones who, especially the ebook side of things, where a lot of people haven't bothered to do that. And go get you some Adult Brain ebooks. Contact at thecabin.com for trips and events. There's still some room coming up for that hunting trip. And there's also still some room coming up for the Azores with Randall Carlson and some of the most amazing people in the world that you could ever meet coming up in November. And Easter Island, same deal in March. Grimerica Outlawed for our more controversial content, I would say, most of the time. And also our roundups over there. Our roundups aren't always controversial. That's just like our outlets to just go off on whatever we want to go off on. Sometimes that's esoteric, sometimes it's cataclysmic, and sometimes it's just freaking out geopolitics or health stuff, which we just couldn't really do stuff. There's a bunch of stuff we can't do here anymore if we want to keep this brand going and monetizable. So grimerica.ca/support. Other than that, we love you guys. Oh, join the chats too. Candace will give me shit. So join the chats, join the Telegram. That's a good way that you can talk to us directly. You can get messages us directly, and there's like a community of cool people there. So
who was giving you shit?
Ryan from Kansas, because I don't mention the chats enough.
Oh yeah, Ryan from Kansas. I got to try and get in there. I should try.
You better get in there. I mean, he's gonna have a fucking hernia, or what? Not a hernia, an aneurysm. That's what you have. Freaking out. So join the chats.
I thought it wasn't. I thought, okay, I'll talk to you about it later.
Join the Telegram. Other than that, we love you. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.